Thank
All
you again.
right, it is Friday. Happy Friday to everybody. April 3rd, 2020. And we're continuing our Police Officers Credit Union Association Business Partner series, especially during our temporary crisis of the coronavirus pandemic, in the effort to give all of our POCUA police credit unions, business partners, police partners information and education that we need right now. And as Radhika and I joked, and I will introduce Radhika very, very shortly, about compliance, because she runs a firm called Parama Partners that has a number of experts that help financial institutions with compliance. We were joking the other day that even in a pandemic, compliance is still a thing. As much as we would like to forget about it, it is still a part of our lives. And actually, I know that Radhika and her experts will talk about some very key things to think about and be aware of during a pandemic such as this. With no further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Radhika Delakia-Lipton, the CEO of Parama Partners, to help us navigate compliance during the pandemic. Take it away.
Thank you so much for that, Ken. As I said, thank you again for allowing me to be a business partner with this credit union association. First, I want to thank our police officers and first responders. I know they have a difficult job just outside of a crisis, and it's magnified even more so now. Our condolences are out to the families who have lost police officers or are affected by this pandemic. So our prayers are with all of you, and also with you as a credit union. All your team is safe and healthy. We just wish you the best during this time. As Ken mentioned, compliance goes on whether we like it or not. But we now have new things to focus on, and such as the activation of our business continuity plans, or how to stop the bad guys from our new schemes, from all their new schemes. Parama Partners is a help desk support services company for credit unions only. We help with all areas of regulatory compliance. For just a little bit of trivia for you, Parama means the highest and best support in Lithuanian and Sanskrit. So now you know where we got our name from. I am really, really thrilled that our senior team is here today to share their expertise with you. And there is no way we can cover everything in an hour. So please post your questions. We will get back to you by email if we haven't answered them during this call. In addition to my exceptional team, we're also joined by Jim Tingey, who is also a former law enforcement officer, but is the CEO of Jade Software, a company that we're collaborating with that provides a software solution for marijuana-related banking, which I know all of you think about from time to time. So with respect to your time, let's just jump right in. And the first person I want to introduce you to is Frank Centofanti. He's a certified anti-money laundering specialist with implementation of money service banking, marijuana-related banking, and as of late, our resident expert for the new California Consumer Privacy Protection Act. So I will hand it over to Frank. We have to unmute Frank, Ken.
Thank you, Radhika. The topic I'm going to be covering is BSA transaction monitoring. And one of the things that you'll need to look out for is the AML transaction monitoring system that you have in place. And you might have to adjust some of the parameters or some of the scenarios in your AML transaction monitoring system in order to reflect the different or the changing activities of members during the pandemic. So for example, whether you have branches that are open, completely open, or maybe a lot of branches are closed and members have to go to one other branch instead of their normal branch, or it could be reduced hours or whatever, or reduced functionality. The customer or the members may have to do their transactions in a manner different than what they're normally used to, and different than what their customer profile might indicate. So that's where you have to take a look. I think at the beginning it might be a little bit difficult until you get the alerts in the system. You don't want to have too many alerts. You don't want to have too few alerts. And that's where the adjustment of the AML transaction monitoring system comes into place. So until you run the scenarios once or twice, you'll finally then get an idea if you're getting too many alerts or not, and what types of adjustments that you might need to make. So just as an example, in the financial services industry, you might have a customer or member that has a restaurant, for example, and restaurants are either closed completely or on very limited hours or limited types of service, just curbside service or pickup or things like that. They don't have the normal dine-in customers. So if you have a member like that that is getting a lot of cash or requesting a lot of cash, you'd have to wonder, why are you need cash more than what you used before, especially since the bills might be completely or at reduced hours or reduced service. That's just one example of a change in sort of transaction behavior that could happen. You might have customers requesting receipt or not capture that otherwise wouldn't request that, or other types of electronic banking. And so then you also have to determine whether or not you want to take additional risk and let a customer have that you might not normally let them have, or if you want to adhere to your current risk tolerances and not let that customer do that. So again, another decision that has to be made. ATM usage is another indicator. A lot of cash coming in the ATM or a lot of cash coming out of the ATM, more normal versus the member's behavior in the past. Another area to consider would be the inability to file BSA regulatory reports with limited timeframes due to staff shortages. So if somebody is out sick, especially a key person that's out sick, they might not be able to submit the reports timely. So FinCEN did issue a news release for financial institutions impacted by COVID-19 to contact FinCEN and their federal and state regulatory agency and to discuss any of the possible delays or inability to file the BSA reports. So you want to make sure that your continuity plan that's in place can address covering other staff positions, especially if the BSA officer is out sick, who's covering for the BSA officer? That's such a key position. And then also it brings to light the importance of cross-training your staff. So you want to make sure that people can cover when other people are out sick. And just to try to keep the staff healthy, be vigilant as far as letting staff share equipment. So you don't know who's a carrier, so you want to make sure that you're not sharing phones, you're not sharing keyboards and everything, just to make sure that you try to keep the staff as healthy as possible throughout this. And then moving on to some of the other key items to watch out for: elder abuse and other pandemic scams. So in terms of any kind of a crisis, it's always going to bring out people that are looking to take advantage of those that might be under stress. And you want to make sure that you're being vigilant for members that are being victimized by scams or by family members who may be putting pressure on them to take out home equity lines of credit when they normally wouldn't be doing something like that. So elder abuse could happen externally or could happen even within the family. Some of the scams that you could be seeing now would be imposter scams. So fraudsters that will attempt to act on behalf of a charity or a government agency, for example, Red Cross or the IRS or the CDC or the Social Security Administration, crowdfunding. So they may be soliciting donations or trying to obtain personal and private information throughout those attempts. Phishing scams, which are emails by fraudsters claiming to be a legitimate company, and they'll embed a hyperlink. So what they'll do is they'll somehow get your email and then send you an email with a link for you to click. So do not click on those links. You should always go to the site directly yourself. Go to Google or whatever search engine you're using and type in, like if you're trying to go to a CDC website, type that in yourself instead of clicking on the links. And make sure that your customers know that as well. Robocalls, there's probably going to be an increase in robocalls trying to get, let's say that they're offering help with getting stimulus checks or tax extensions or debt relief, and they might try to get member information that way. Investment scams, which would be promotions regarding products or services that make claims to detect or cure COVID-19. And that kind of goes hand in hand with product scams as well. Marketing ads or letters selling unapproved or misbranded products that make false health claims to prevent COVID-19. So some of the proactive measures that you could use to try to limit the elder abuse and other pandemic scams would be detection. So you could set up a screen in your system targeted at members that are aged 65 and over that have had a change in type or volume of activity, such as the cash withdrawals and so forth. Could be wires, check deposits, or withdrawals. You could also do customer notification, either by mail, by a website posting, by a message on the ATM machine, or making proactive phone calls to those members that you think might be more at risk. And then, of course, conduct training for the entire staff to make sure that they're aware of the different types of scamming activity that could be taking place nowadays. And then the last topic I wanted to cover was social media, which I think it would be a good idea to try to guide your staff in terms of things that they might want to post or not want to post. Make sure that the staff is getting information from official sites rather than third-party unofficial sites. Maybe they're hearing something from their friends that isn't quite accurate. So accuracy of information is very important right now. And then, posting items that might present a reputational risk to the credit union. So you just don't want to have anything that would be improper or incorrect being traced back to the credit union. And that wraps up the topics that I wanted to mention today.
Thank you, Frank. Does anyone have any questions for Frank? Okay, we'll move on to Rose Friscoe. She's a former compliance officer for a credit union in California, but now residing in North Carolina. Rose has managed all areas of risk management, especially fraud. So, Rose?
And I don't see Rose on here. Would she be? In fact,
Hmm.
I will unmute all real quick. Rose, please
Hi.
announce yourself.
Yeah. Hi, can you hear me?
Ah, yes. Perfect. Go for it.
Yeah, I'm sorry, my daughter borrowed my laptop, so I'm appearing as Sabrina Chaco.
Got it.
And I was trying to figure out how to change it back to my name earlier this morning, and I couldn't figure it out. So this is Rose Friscoe. I appear as Sabrina Chaco, and I'm a 20-year credit union person, so I wanted to focus a little bit on some guidance from the NCUA. If you haven't done so already, please.
Uh-oh, we got her blocked. Hold on, Rose.
Hi, can you hear me now?
Yeah. Oops.
Okay, great. So I just wanted to call attention to the NCUA letter number 20 CU-02. It contains specific information about COVID-19 guidance. It was issued on March 16th. You can go to ncua.gov and pull that letter, and it's a great resource for credit unions. It has FAQs there all the way from the recommendations from the NCUA on how to help your member, which I'm sure all of the credit unions are doing right now. But it also stresses that your assistance should be prudent. So, you know, because our primary objective is safety and soundness as well. So please make sure you read that NCUA guidance and share it with your risk department and your senior team. On there, again, I said there are FAQs all the way from what kind of notice you need to give for branch closure, all the way to Reg CC emergency condition holds, and the temporary suspension of the Reg DD reserve requirement. The other bulletin that I wanted to call attention to is the Ach Operations Bulletin 2-2020, and that was issued on March 9th. Basically, it's saying, you know, NACHA, they basically said, because you're not prepared for this crisis doesn't make it okay for you to miss your timelines. So make sure that you you're able to meet all the NACHA requirements in regards to timelines. They suggest to do same-day returns to try and help that situation. And if you're not going to make your deadlines, to make sure that you notify that impacted financial institution. Next, I wanted to talk about a task force. I was around, show my age a little bit here, for the mortgage crisis back in 2007, 2008. And I think this is a great opportunity for everyone to make sure that they take those lessons learned from that situation and have your task force, you know, review that, what went right, what went wrong. A lot of our plans at that time were to, of course, serve our member, but also to strategically handle the erosion to our capital. So, you know, for those that were around at that time, you know, include them in that conversation. Definitely risk and compliance should be a part of the task force dealing with the pandemic, because as Frank said, even though, you know, we all have our BCP plans and we have a pretty solid compliance and risk program, there are a lot of bad actors that are coming out of the woodwork. So fraud will also be in the rampage, you know, up on the rise. One of the things that I really stress at this time is to educate your members. That's something that the task force should be talking about. There's going to be, you know, a lot of our members look at us as their, you know, their primary savings. You know, a lot of members have everything with us, the mortgage, the credit cards, the savings, the checking, everything. So they may be looking to us, and it's going to be difficult because most of us are close to lobby traffic or by appointment only. So we're deploying a lot of our staff, I would imagine, to the call center that used to be frontline in the lobby. Make sure that they know how to properly authenticate, because authenticating a member right in front of you is really easy. They show their ID, the ID looks legit. You look at the picture, you look at the person, you know that's them. It's a lot trickier, especially if you don't have an authentication system like LexisNexis to prompt you with questions to ask. So make sure if you're deploying people to your call center that don't normally work there, that they're properly educated on, and trained on how to authenticate members, because I'm sure you're getting a flood of phone calls. And then also one of the things that I always recommend is to, because we, as credit unions, we want to be there for our members, and we need to draw a fine line between assisting them and advising them. Our branch managers, especially, and assistant branch managers, they develop relationships with our members, and they might overstep and start advising. And we need to make sure they understand that they are not tax or legal advisors, and kind of give them more of an idea about that fine line that they're walking. One of the things that my credit union did back in the mortgage crisis was we also had some of our frontline staff become certified financial counselors, because to help those that are impacted, go on their way to recovery. Because like I said, you want to make sure that the employees that are advising your members are qualified. Next, I want to talk about branch closures. Whenever, there are shelter in place or stay at home orders for the city, for the county, and for the state, you will want to follow whatever those are that are the most restrictive. In most cases, they're viewing financial services as essential. So I don't think I've seen any come out. I've been following, here, of course, in North Carolina, but also in California, because that's where the bulk of my peers are in California. But I don't think I've seen any guidance come out stating that financial institutions are not essential. But one of the things also that you want to consider is the safety and the health of your employees. There's much more that goes into the decision of how you're going to operate. I'd recommend taking a look at your branch proximity. Perhaps all your branches do not need to be open. You could open part of it. Look at the layout. Is it laid out? Some branches have the glass, the robbery glass, so that could be an option if you have one branch over the other to choose. And definitely have signs out encouraging social distancing, wipes, open trash cans, things like that. And again, you can also just do it by appointment. Make sure that someone is wiping down, sanitizing the ATMs. Those are going to be heavily used. So make sure that, everyone is just practicing those safe sanitizing measures. One of the other things I wanted to talk about is working from home. That's something that I think that we want to do because we want to try and keep everyone safe, but we need to make sure that we're following very well thought out and established work from home protocols, not, hey, here's a laptop, connect through this VPN. It should be something that, the entire program should be approved by, the senior management, especially information technology, and of course, risk compliance, just to make sure that the proper encryption is in place, and also that everyone understands that you are still in a clean desk environment. Usually the home protocols that I see are, it should be in a room with the door closed and everything treated as highly sensitive information. So again, in our rush to, we don't want to be reactionary. We want to make sure, of course, we want to continue serving our members, but that your work from home protocol has gone through the chain of command and has been approved and vetted properly by technology and risk and compliance. Online new account openings and other remote services. Again, there are probably a lot of credit unions out there that offer this already, but may not. They might just have the lending side open where you can apply for a loan but not open up accounts. So there might be a push to finish, some projects that are in the works, and in that rush, you might think that I'll forego the fraud modeling criteria. It's very important right now to make sure that your fraud criteria models are in place for everything that you do, and risk assessments are really important. Right now, we're going through all these process changes because we have to adapt to the environment. It's important to have your risk and compliance teams do risk assessments and review at least, what are the changes, how it's going to impact what, bad actors might come out, and we can't be risk adverse, but we need to make sure that we properly mitigate those risks. Helping members, again, you don't have to have, expensive, software and things like that. All the information that you need is in your core. And so if you don't already have it, you want to, have those reports available to see those members that you can reach out to. Are their direct deposits have stopped? Are their checks returning? Are their payments being slow? Things like that, so that you can reach out to them, perhaps with skip-a payments, mortgage forbearance, things like that. And then at the same time, because I wouldn't be a risk person if I didn't mention this, you also want to keep an eye out there for possibly, do you need to take a look at that member's overdraft limit and their credit card limit as well. Of course, we want to help them, but at the same time, safety and soundness is important as well. So that's pretty much everything that I wanted to cover.
Thank you, Sabrina /
You're welcome.
We appreciate your passion. Thank you so much. We're at about half past the hour, so I am going to ask my rest of my consultants. We're all very passionate about compliance. We love what we do. So we are going to speed it up. We apologize. But again, if you need to reach out to us, you can through Ken or me, and we'll get your questions answered. But next, I want to introduce you to Ben Farias. Ben is a former regulator and a longtime compliance professional for many, many financial institutions. Obviously extensive experience in deposit and lending compliance, but he is definitely a person with superpowers. So Ben, I'm handing it off to you.
Good morning or afternoon, depending on where you are in the United States. I'm going to be talking about lending compliance first. The first topic I want to address is collection issues. We know that the virus, the pandemic, is causing significant financial disruption. We're seeing just a tremendous rise in unemployment claims, and that's going to ripple through our economy, and it's going to affect your members. Your credit union may need to take collection action in order to protect its capital base. But when you do that, you need to be aware that there are consumer protections provided by both federal and state law. So obviously the stimulus legislation that recently went through Congress has some protections. I think there's a 90-day moratorium on evictions. There's some provisions for bankruptcy protections. And also your state may have passed legislation that provide additional consumer protections for people who have lost their employment due to the pandemic. Probably a good number of your members own income property, both single-family, 1 to 4 family properties, and maybe even multi-family properties. There's a law protecting tenants in foreclosure that if you're proceeding with a foreclosure action and you find out that that property has a tenant in it, there's a lease in place, you need to provide those tenants with a 90-day notice before you can evict them. Now, if that property is sold, by the successor in interest, then you need to give them 90-day notice before you can terminate the lease. So you need to be aware of those things. There are also some fair lending implications, particularly with age discrimination. The mortality statistics that we're seeing on the COVID-19 virus indicate that elders, people over 60, are much more adversely impacted by the virus than younger people. So you need to make sure that, when you're in a collection mode or you're looking at a new application, that there's not any inappropriate discretion being exercised in terms of the applicant's or the borrower's age. So you're going to see a lot of families because they've lost their employment. Maybe they're going to be applying for signature loans, what have you. You need to make sure that those are done on a fair and equitable basis. One thing to keep in mind about the Equal Credit Opportunity Act is it does prohibit discrimination on the basis of age. This applies to all types of credit and through the credit life cycle. And keep in mind that if your regulator determines that there's an apparent violation of a COA, that's an automatic Department of Justice referral. So that's going to cause a more expense and more problems for your credit union if you have to deal with attorneys and the Department of Justice. The next topic I want to talk about is the use of medical information. The Fair and Accurate Transaction Act includes prohibitions regarding the use of medical information. So there are prohibitions in the FACT Act regarding when and how medical information may be obtained. There are rules about making the credit decision in terms of credit information. What information can you use if the applicant offers medical information versus what you can't ask for in the application process. So just a pound of prevention is worth a lot of cure in terms of need to train your lenders to be aware of the law's definitions, what is prohibited, what can't they ask for, and then what are the exceptions where they can ask for certain medical information. I'm going to switch over to deposit compliance. And I want to talk about the protection of government benefit payments. You're going to have a lot of people that are going to be overdrawing accounts. They may be receiving retirement automatic payments. They may be receiving Social Security payments or federal government retirement or railroad retirement. Those are protected benefits, and you can't take those. You have to leave, I think it's 2 months worth of payments in the account before you can consider taking those. The benefits that are covered by those protections are Social Security, supplemental security income, veterans benefits, federal railroad retirement, unemployment and sickness, civil service retirement systems, and federal employee retirement systems. So be aware of that. When you're dealing with, again, you're going to have a lot of people in distressed financial situations, and they're going to be looking to protect your credit union's capital base and your assets. Just keep in mind that there are certain things that you can't take if it has to do with federal benefits. Do you want me to move on to pandemic signing, Radhika?
No, we're going to go to Katie first, and then you can chime back in for the pandemic piece. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Ben. And Ben and Gary both are housed in Texas, so we have coverage throughout the U.S., which is really great. Next, we have Katie Prefke, who also has been head of compliance for a multi-billion-dollar credit union. In addition to compliance, Katie specializes in vendor management, contract negotiation, and mortgage compliance. But today she's really going to specifically bring some questions to you to think about in terms of vendor management. So Katie?
Good morning. Thank you, Radhika. And thank you for having us today. So thinking about vendor management, unfortunately, because we're in a pandemic, we can't forget about it. There's still concerns, and we still need to be monitoring and managing our vendor management program. During the pandemic, the FFIC recently issued guidance on pandemic planning and reminded financial institutions that their business continuity plan should address pandemic threat. And they also stressed the importance of vendor management. And they said that a good pandemic plan requires checking in with your critical vendors to ensure that they are prepared for the pandemic or to maybe make alternative arrangements. So this is a really good time to be looking at your critical vendors. And I have some questions here we'll go through in a minute that we should be asking, or that you should be asking your vendors and documenting the information. the thing that we know is that vendors also can bring with them high reputation risk, and that's even more accentuated at this point in time. So let's take a look at some of the key questions that I recommend that you ask. First of all, let me see, hang on just a minute.
It's on the screen, Katie.
Okay, I see there, yes, all right. But they're in a little bit different order. So what are your vendors doing to monitor the situation? You know, coronavirus isn't an event that hits just once and is over again. It'll probably be coming in waves, and unfortunately we'll have other issues that we'll be up against, you know, as life goes on. So is a vendor staying on top of the latest updates and find out where they're getting their information? And again, it's probably a good idea to document all of this and keep it as part of your vendor management system. How will your vendor inform you of any important updates? Do they have up-to-date contact information for you, and do you have it as well? And do you already have a plan or a process for sharing information and updates? How will the vendor continue to provide services in the event of a large-scale employee absenteeism? Are they equipped to have their employees work from home? Are they, have they set up plans and processes, and is that working? Are they going to be able to continue their process and continue providing you with the services that you need? Will this delay the delivery of new products or services or updates? Are there things that your members are expecting or waiting for and that are going to be impacted by this? And how will you handle that situation and also communicate that to your members? Does the vendor rely on critical third-party vendors themselves? And are they overseeing those vendors' pandemic preparations, and how strong are those plans? So you might have a relationship just with the first vendor, but they also have their own third-party vendors. And are they managing their vendors appropriately? It's a big concern. Is the vendor financially prepared to weather the coronavirus? Can they continue to function and provide you with the products and the services that you need? Or are they not going to be able to continue? So it's good to have a backup plan for that as well. Is a vendor's supply chain secure? If they're providing you with products, let's say as an example, replacement cards, do they have the access to those, and will they be able to provide those to you in a timely manner so you can continue to serve your members? Another big concern. And when was the last time the vendor updated and tested their BCP plan, or do they have a pandemic plan? So review and assess the strengths of the vendor's plan and compare it to the CDC checklist. So again, make sure that they're getting up-to-date, current information directly from CDC, and that they're following those plans, and that they're continuing to operate in a way that you want to have your members treated. So kind of short and sweet on mine, but in conclusion, there's still some conflicting information as to whether COVID-19 would be considered a force majeure event. So it's a good idea to take a look at your contracts right now for your critical vendors and review them for things like SLAs, penalties for non-performance, force majeure, and also the definition of an act of God, and make sure that they're continuing to uphold their part of the bargain. And you might want to be thinking of other vendors you can rely on for some of these critical areas if a vendor falls short after your review. And again, in conclusion, these are good vendor management due diligence steps, not only for our current situation, but going forward. As you do your annual vendor reviews and as you go through the new vendor selection process, these are all the types of things you'd like to be looking at for your critical vendors as well.
Thank you, Katie.
Any questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
And just a note, for anybody with questions, I have you muted for now so we can get through all the material. But there is at the very bottom of your screen, if you are on a laptop or a tablet, if you're on a smartphone, maybe not. But I know if you're on a laptop, there is a chat function at the very bottom. So if you have a question, and we may get to it at the end, please feel free, so you don't forget it, to put it in the chat, and we will certainly get to you. But back to you, Radhika. I just wanted to make that quick note.
Thank you. Thank you. So we have to obviously be very concerned about our staff, our members, our vendors, but let's not forget the IT component. So with that, I'd like to introduce John Mason, who will present our IT issues to consider. John has over 25 years of experience in financial services, internal audit, information security. He's held positions such as Chief Internal Auditor, Chief Information Security Officer for multi-billion-dollar credit unions as well. So with that, John?
Great, thank you. With the IT, certainly one area that's impacted, especially with people working remotely, is user access. So some of the modifications you're going to want to do and take a look at during the crisis is, how is your remote access secured? Hopefully it's with a VPN or something like this. Who needs it? Is it provided to everybody or just to those people with a need? And also, how long is it going to be needed from there? In particular, you want to be paying particular attention to periodic reviews, such as quarterly user access reviews. That is, who needs access to the network and the IT resources. And then annually, or maybe even semi-annually, depending, the user permissions review. With some people being unavailable or short-staffed, you may in fact be at least temporarily increasing permission. If this is the case, then certainly you may want to switch to at least a semi-annual review of the permissions. For system and network patching, as was discussed, you're going to see a lot of scams and malware appearing now regarding COVID-19, phishing and such as well. So you want to make sure that everything is patched up promptly from there. In terms of vendor access and compliance, you'll want to take a look at their SSAE 18 reports. If those don't sound familiar, then perhaps SSAE 16 or the old SAS 70, same thing. Within those reports, those are performed by a CPA, audits are performed by a CPA firm. Often you'll see them for payroll and also for your primary IT systems there. Within those reports, there's usually going to be a section called Complementary User Entity Controls, or QUICs for short. These are controls that the vendor requires of the customer, and that need to be implemented. Often you'll see them, like I say, for an IT systems vendor, often for HR, payroll, and perhaps some other vendors too. These controls need to be reviewed at least annually, and you want to make sure you document your review and compliance with each of these. Now, if a key vendor doesn't have an SSAE 18 report, then you probably want to go ahead and make sure the vendors receive give them a security questionnaire they should complete and then review. This helps you with your due diligence to make sure that everything is done the way it should be from there. In terms of physical access monitoring, certainly with the access badges, if you've got those in your organization, it may be that people are going to have more access, again, because of more limited staff from there. You do want to make sure that you are doing ideally a monthly or at least less than quarterly review of access logs. And pay particular attention to failed access attempts. It may be that somebody's trying to get somewhere or some resources they shouldn't be. In terms of door keys, certainly take a look at those as part of a standard review. Now, in terms of BYOD, or bring your own device, it may be that with the current situation, people don't necessarily the organization has not necessarily issued or have the resources to issue sufficient laptops and such to the staff. So with that, people may want to use their own devices. Often this is fine, provided that, one, you get a signed agreement from the users as to what they're allowed to use it for and such from there. You need to make sure that they maintain a minimum level of security that the CU mandates and can control. In terms of antivirus and anti-malware, some organizations actually provide this free to the employees to help make sure that you've got there's a consistent level of protection when somebody connects to the network. It is possible, in fact, and I've seen it happen, where IT will configure the connections whereby when the person tries to connect up to the network, the system automatically checks the user's laptop or whichever to see if it does in fact have the most recent updates for antivirus, anti-malware. And if not, then it doesn't allow, it forces the update before it allows the connection. This helps certainly protect the credit union from there. Within BYOD, you also want to make sure your contract allows the CU to do a remote wipe of the device if the device is stolen or if the employee separates from the organization. This helps protect members' data privacy from there. And then lastly, you want to make sure that the BYOD also provides for using a virtual private network or VPN connection. With this encryption on both ends, helps make sure that the privacy is in fact maintained appropriately from there. Any questions?
Thank you, John.
Radhika?
Yeah, thank you, John. Last but certainly not least, as part of the formal presentation, we have Gary Pennington, who will also be joined with Ben Farias. Gary is our newest member of the family. Gary will be starting up our attestation and internal audit services through our sister company, which is RAD LLC. So I will hand it off to Gary and Ben to talk about pandemic planning, or execution for that matter.
Thank you, Radhika. So if you aren't scared at this point from everything we've said, don't worry. There is a framework. There is a possibility to round this all up into a nice bow and package. There's a lot of things that we covered, and starting with the risk assessment process, saying what have we got, what are our biggest risks, and how do we address those? Finding out what those critical processes are, and making sure that we identify only the critical processes, because when we're getting our business up and running, we don't care about some of the smaller service sides of things that may not be critical for our customers. We care about getting customer service first. So how do we make sure that happens? Make sure that those critical processes are identified in that risk assessment. I think we've talked about vendor analysis and vendor vetting our vendors and making sure that they're on board with everything. That's also critical to this process, but you want to make sure that not only are they that they are strong, but you may have to in some cases implement redundancies as well, or have a backup plan, because you're only going to be as strong as your weakest link. And if they are a super critical vendor, then you may need to have a backup plan for them, because you never know what type of situation is going to happen. Communication is one of those areas that is very critical to this process. Obviously, through being isolated off into our various sequestered places, we're all communicating virtually, but knowing who to contact and what to contact them for is very critical. I had a client exactly a month or two ago, for example, told me, he said, I'm not going to be concerned about maintaining a list of critical contacts, for example, government contracts or whoever I need to, because when the time comes, I'll look them up and I'll find them. I got a call from him 2 or 3 days ago saying, I wish I would have talked to you back. I wish I would have taken your advice back then, because now I don't know who to contact. So being prepared on knowing what to communicate, who to communicate with, and when to communicate is critical. The last piece of this thing that I think is really important is really building a business continuity plan that is scenario-based, not just having a plan for a pandemic, for example, but also planning for something, as a tornado or a fire or any kind of thing. What do you do in certain situations? Certain situations may not require the full implementation of your business continuity plan, but it also may cover all of the different possibilities. So think about it from scenarios as well. What if we had a flood? And what do we do in those cases? So think about the different options and how it can impact a vendor. It may not take out a vendor in one situation, but it would take them out in another. So you want to think about whatever it takes them out or makes that weak link go away, you want to think about how it can go away. One of the last pieces, I guess, that you want to implement into your business continuity plan is, learning from your mistakes. You want to have a desktop exercise. That's one of the critical pieces is not only just having a plan on paper, but also communicating it out to everybody, letting them practice it. I had one client who, on a periodic basis, they would come into the branch and say, we just had a fire next door. What are you going to do? And they would start the stopwatch and just let everybody try and figure out what it would do. Obviously, they knew it was a mock setting and there wasn't it was a test, but they also got to figure out, what the pieces were and how people reacted. So you want to be able to test your business continuity plan as best you can. And take those lessons learned, bring them back into the cycle, and revise, improve, and make it a circular process of continuous improvement. The last thing I want to bring up is that, resources are always tough when you're talking about putting together a business continuity plan. So, to the extent possible, leverage those resources that you can that could have cross-functional type of expertise. Internal audit is always a good resource because they tend to have a view that crosses multi-departments and multi-facets. So to the extent, if you've got an internal audit department that can assist you, this would be a good task for them to take on. One area that I did want to cover, and I haven't quite got there yet, is that ISO came up with a new standard about a month and a half ago. It's hot off the presses, called ISO 22301, and it covers business continuity. It is an excellent framework to look at when you're trying to implement all this. It doesn't give you the granular detail. It leaves you that detail for yourself, but it does give you a framework to think within and make sure that you've got all of those elements addressed. So that's a critical resource. We can help you point you in the right direction to come up with any type of information you need on that one. It's usually the website that they have is pretty informative. So by all means, do your research. But I've been able to find some pretty good information on that one as well. So if you need to, contact me and I can give you some good places to look. So Ben, you want to wrap it up with what your last piece is?
Yeah, I'd like to just emphasize the importance of testing. My experience is you could have on paper the most wonderful pandemic plan, and then when that pandemic actually occurs and you haven't actually ever tested the plan, you find out all these gaps and holes. And so I can't emphasize the importance of periodic testing of your plan. Test your communications methodology, whether you're going to use a website or you're going to use a call tree or texting, but make sure that your staff understand that if they don't, you send out a general message, and then if they don't hear from somebody in their chain within so many, then they call the next person, etc. The other thing is when you're going through these testings, is you need to establish succession plans. Who, if manager A becomes incapacitated, they're homesick with the virus, or God forbid somebody passes away, who is the person that's going to assume those responsibilities? It's a difficult thing to do, but it's important so that your credit union can continue operating when it's stressed during a pandemic. Anyway, those are my comments. Thank you very much for your attention.
All right, Radhika.
Wait, I have a question. Yeah, I have a question for Gary and Ben. I've had a lot of questions from our credit union members, clients, and other financial institutions. Since this is an actual live implementation of our pandemic plan, this is not a tabletop test or any other form of test. And I know that we will all get past this. What is your recommendation to gather everybody to reevaluate the plan that they had to execute, reevaluate the RTOs, reevaluate what worked and what doesn't work, and can you document this essentially as a live test?
You can definitely take lessons learned. I mean, what I would recommend each of you do after this whole thing settles down and we've had a chance to catch our breath is to really do a good post-mortem on what happened, what failed, what you can do better, how you can improve the process. And then, when you're looking at the vendors, make sure you got that supply chain taken care of. Evaluate where you need to focus your efforts and where you need to bolster it. It's not only a desktop exercise, this is a real exercise. So, a lot of people got caught off guard on this one, but for sure, you can learn from this thing and build that into your business continuity plan. If you don't have one already, it's a great place to start and say, this happened last time, what do we need to do to prevent it? And then use the frameworks, like I said, ISO 22301 or any of the other business continuity frameworks out there to make sure you've got all the elements captured. But yeah, that's a great question.
Thank you. Ken? That's our presentation. I don't know about you, but I feel like I need a cup of coffee now. But there's just always so much to talk about with compliance. You're like, woof. And we're just, kind of scratching the tip here. So.
Yeah, I completely hear you. I will take the slides off, and I will also unmute everybody if I can. There we go. Everybody should be unmuted. Hopefully nobody's playing any dance music in the background. But a couple of things. One, I usually allow for about a 15-minute to 20-minute cushion after these, even though we're at the top of the hour. Anybody that absolutely needs to leave us, or especially any of the subject matter experts, if you need to leave us, and I'm not even on camera there. Look at that. There I am. I certainly understand, but for the next 10 minutes or so.
Go back to not being on camera?
Yeah, I know. That was much better. It actually ran much smoother until I came back on camera. So thanks for pointing that out, Robert. That's highly appreciative, and I'll make sure.
I'm here to encourage you, brother.
Yeah, I'm sure. I'll make sure to talk to you about that one-on-one later. Anyhow, be that as it may. We do have a few minutes here that I will leave this open. If you have to leave, thank you for being with us. But I also want to make sure that we wanted to make this and all of our business partner sessions a little bit of a special benefit for, number one, any of our POCUA constituents, as well as those of you that we were blessed to have you join us live. So especially for anybody on video, raise your hand because I can see you. Do you have a question for any of the subject matter experts?
And we overwhelm them.
Okay, well, there's a lot of information. Obviously, we've recorded this. I'll make this available to all POCUA, police credit unions, business partners, and police partners. So if you miss something, feel free to watch this again. You go to the spot that you may need further clarification. Obviously, our business partner, Parama, is here for you. So if you have any questions, you can even give them to me. I will make sure that they get forwarded on to our CEO of Parama, Radhika, so she can also get the right subject matter expert on it. If there are no questions, I do want to close with most, if not all, of our POCUA business partners do offer a discount to our POCUA police credit unions. And I understand, Radhika, that you do offer a discount, especially during these tough times, just for our POCUA police credit unions. Did you want to talk about that at all?
Yeah, thank you again. As I said, we're ready, willing, and able to help our credit union partners. across the wide spectrum of compliance and regulatory requirements. So with that said, and with the current situations, we're putting our best foot forward here and offering a 30% discount to the annual membership. It's a subscription-based service to our access to our consultants. As I said, it's 30%. It's risk-free for 90 days. If by at the end of 90 days, you're not satisfied with what you've been able to receive, which I doubt, but you will get full money back, no questions asked. But we are here to help you in any way we can.
If one of our POCUA police credit unions is satisfied but still don't want to pay you, can they tell you that they're unsatisfied? Yeah, I feel that adding humor at this particular time is very, very key. So I will not stop with the very bad jokes.
I know where to find you, Ken. I'll reach out to you.
Yeah. Good luck with my bank account and getting that. Eddie, one of the last points that I want to make, and we will kind of wrap this up for the day since we're already a little bit past the top of the hour, is a big thank you to our business partner, Parama Partners, that was able to put this together within days. And I'll stress this in some future emails to all of our POCUA friends. But using this technology, while we were a little clunky at the beginning with some minor things, even in-person events are a little clunky. Trust me, I've run them for over 20 years. There's always one little thing that doesn't go right or that's a little bit off. But we pulled this off in days, and we brought a lot of subject matter experts and gave a lot of powerful and valuable information in a very short time. So I stress to all of our POCUA partners, business partners, police credit unions, and friends that this is not that difficult to put together. So while certainly we need to...
We lost him.
Yeah, I'm still here, I think. But although we still need to isolate physically, we don't necessarily need to isolate visibly. So it's a great example there. But thank you to everybody that has joined us. And of course, we will make this video available. So to everybody, please stay healthy and stay safe out there.